All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. Candace Owens. Nope. Nope. No. Nope. Not at all. Nope. 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 Here's my thing. Now see, she spent her life fighting to stay down in the trenches of anti-blackness because it meant that she could have a personal come up and an individual come up at the expense of black people collectively. And she has broken her neck to do all that nonsense for a check. And now that the money is funny, you see how people start moving. And this is why I say all the time, be wary of who it is that you run behind. One of the things that I started to notice in the last few months is that I started to see this narrative of people saying, oh, well, you know what? The stuff she's saying don't sound too bad. She seems like she's all right at the moment, and so on and so forth, because she started to have somewhat of a more nuanced approach with some of the things that she was saying, right? She started to come off a little bit softer. She still had a bunch of terrible things to say, but every now and then there would be a nugget in there that didn't sound as crazy, right? And one of the issues is, in this era of social media and instant gratification, people tend to become forgetful about what they were pissed off about just a few months ago, right? And so we're now in a space where there's something that can piss people off at 9 a.m. and by 10:45, people have moved on to something else. And so when it comes to Candace Owens, now I'm seeing this whole space where folks were trying to act like, oh, you know, she really just wants what's best for us as a people and so on and so forth. And now they're trying to make her out to be Assata Shakur and, you know, Betty Shabazz and, you know, she's Medgar Evers' wife. You know, she's just like Fred Hampton. She one of us. Now all of a sudden she Malcolm X. I said, if y'all don't be for real, if y'all don't go and be for real, I said, ain't no way just because you done seen a few tidbits where she doesn't sound as cuckoo, all of a sudden y'all want to act like she's about the people. Please. So anyway, something in my spirit told me something's going on. Something is off. And see, because I don't really pay attention to her like that, I didn't realize that her and Ben Shapiro had been beefing for a few months, pretty much since everything started with the atrocities in Gaza. And so, you know, I had no idea that they had, you know, their shenanigans going, because she's not somebody I really pay that much attention to. And I'm like, something is going on, because, you know, now she's appearing on these different shows that a lot of times she normally wouldn't necessarily go on and have such a nuanced approach even with her interview. So I'm like, okay, she's been on the Breakfast Club. She's been on the Joe Budden podcast. I don't consider those outlets black media, but I am aware that these are outlets that market to black audiences. And so, you know, and even that, they gave her some slap on the wrist interviews. I'm like, see, y'all let these people come on here and they can disrespect us all day. And then when they come on y'all shows, y'all don't call them out on anything, but whatever. And so I'm just sitting here like, something is off. I was like, I feel like she's low-key rebranding, right? It feels like it. Like she's not jumping all the way in, but she's inching closer, right? And so then I find out that she has been fired from the Daily Wire, right? Ben Shapiro and her, that beef they've been having, you know, he was like, you're done. You're out of here. Done. And so I find out today, oh, she's been fired from Daily Wire. And then I was reading the post because I said, well, let me see what the scoop is with this, right? And so she makes this post. The rumors are true. I am finally free. If you would like to support my work, you can head to CandaceOwens.com, where you will be directed to my locals page, or you can give a gift at GoCandace.com. There will be many announcements in the weeks to come. And then she put the American flag and a cross, because, you know, she's a Christian. You know, she loves the Lord. And then the next part, because I was like, wait a minute, you know, give a gift. This something don't sound right here. And then the next page, you know, join Team Candace. And it has a part where you know, you can donate. And you can donate, what, $5, $10, $15, $25, $50, $100, $250? Yeah, so in the world of safe spaces, Candace Owens is creating one where thoughts can flow freely from politics and culture to good and the bad. Follow her straight into the center of it all. Support her. And donations. I said, donations? Donations? Not miss, you know, get rid of welfare and folks need to stop asking for handouts and entitlement program and pull yourself up by the bootstrap and people don't work harder. Donations? Donations? What? Really? Wow. 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 Okay? Like Oprah. Wow. Donations, huh? Okay. Like, and my thing is, like, you just got fired. You already asking for donations? This is a new firing. Like, your name and stuff is still in the system. You still got a paycheck coming. You know, they got to still pay you for whatever you work for, and you already at the donations phase? Interesting. Okay, so, and so it goes to the point where you start to see things work in that cycle, right? Every now and then, there's always a prominent black figure who decides to latch onto all of the anti-black talking points they can latch onto because they know that there is money to be made when they can get behind some foolery and some nonsense. She is definitely one of those people. But when the tides turn, when doors are closed, when opportunities get cut off, when the source of the money gets challenged and compromised, what do folks always do? And I said this literally on the last live. They always start trying to rebrand to come on back home to Black America and come to the black folks. So next step is, hey y'all, you know, I finally watched BAPS. I saw Friday and Boys in the Hood. I understand now. Wakanda forever, Black Power. And I'm like, nah. It ain't that easy. You don't get to just jump back up in here and think you're going to be in charge of nothing. You know, if you get the luxury to even be brought back into the collective, you on punishment for like 10 years, okay? You on probation. You don't get to be in charge of nothing. Your opinion does not even get to be heard. You just get to sit in silence and be happy you in the room. Because we've seen this pattern happen so many times. It makes me think back to Paris Denard, who did all that cooning and running around and embarrassing himself. And then as soon as them allegations came out against him, look how they dumped him. Quick, got him up out of there, right? Done. Omarosa told all us we was going to bow down to Trump. We were going to be at his mercy and everything else like that. And as soon as he fired her and her father didn't work no more and she couldn't go to the Christmas party and get in the eggnog and the champagne and sit on Santa's lap and all that other stuff, now she got a book and now she's doing a press run. And you know, well, I'm just trying to take care of my people. My people. I'm like, y'all be on it. Where was the people when you was getting behind that nonsense and you knew that these folks are all about anti-blackness and don't give two F words about black people collectively with anything, but you saw a personal come up, right? And sat there and played in our faces, you know what I mean? And it's the same, you just see that cycle. Even Don Lemon, right? He was on some nonsense for years, right? Then he went on across the water, went to Ghana, got his black people wake-up call, came back, started shaking the table, and now he's no longer at CNN. And then when he thought he had a new opportunity with Elon Musk, which should have been strike 1,500 for him, he should have realized Elon is not somebody to run behind. Look how quick Elon got him up out of there, right? So you constantly see how things move, how things work. Like, Van Jones, you next. But anyway, so I just found it funny. I said, not donations. Not donations. Miss donations. Really? Wow. So much has changed. And so here's the thing. It's not even about Candace Owens being a black conservative, because black conservatives exist, right? People are going to have their viewpoints on how they see the world, how they think the world should operate. But my beef with Candace has always been that Candace decided to make her brand about being just the most vile and nasty person she could be, because there was one core audience that she wanted to capture. Because in that conversation of conservative demographics, there's different pockets in that group, right? But the main pocket she went after was that whole Ben Shapiro demographic, right? The whole red pill, alpha male, conservative white men. We have no emotions, we have no feelings, we have no hearts. We don't even drink water because that's too weak and too woke. We just get nurtured and get our nourishment from the sweat out after working out in the gym, because we used to be the hunters in society and we're prepared for civil war, and what happened in Charlottesville wasn't that bad, and there's a great replacement theory and all this other BS. That's the audience she decided to run behind and capture, because there was money there. She knew that she could be a mouthpiece for anti-blackness and white supremacy, and it would pay her very, very well. And so since 2017, because she magically became a conservative overnight after something else happened that made her pissed off, and she just jumped and did a full 180 and latched right into the nonsense. And so for years, we have watched her gaslight and go on these platforms and spew all these horrible talking points and things where it's like, how can you even sleep at night after saying some of the stuff that you said? And just, here's the thing too, because that core audience is who she was trying to build a foundation with, right? She knew that she couldn't just approach her conservatism in the same way that others have, because there have been other black conservative prominent figures, especially as far as black women as well, but none of them have been able to get the acclaim and the reach that Candace has. And it's because, like I said, Candace knew that she needed to build her brand in the space of, how terrible can I be? How can I make it so that everything that comes out of my mouth is so obscene and out of pocket that, you know, my name is always going to be in the headlines? And of course, in that same conversation, I'm going to throw some tidbits in there that make sense, to make it seem like I care about the people, to make it seem like I just want things to be normal. So yeah, I'm going to attack all these different people, and then I'm going to throw a little tidbit in there that sounds logical and nuanced. So that way you realize that I'm still human. So she knew, by building a brand of just being straight up terrible, right, that she could win over that Ben Shapiro demographic. Now here's where the gotcha is, right? Now she is being reminded that no matter how much you shuck and jive and tap dance and play into the nonsense of the white man's ego, they will remind you of exactly who you are when it's time. Because the minute you piss off the wrong people at the right time, they get you up out of there. And so she recognizes that for the longest, her core audience, her core base, again, has been like the Ben Shapiro disciple crew. But they're not about to ride with her into her next endeavor because they're staying with Ben. Right? This is where the male chauvinism comes in. This is where the anti-blackness comes in. This is a black woman trying to latch into a conservative movement that benefits white men. Right? And now that one of the head white men in charge of that whole demographic has pretty much said, nope, she's done. We're done with her. Understand that his whole following is staying with him. They're not jumping ship with her because there's no leverage with her. And that's the downside of when you choose to be a mouthpiece for white supremacy for your own personal come up. Yeah, the opportunities are going to be there. You're going to climb the ranks. They're going to platform you. They're going to put you everywhere you want to be because you are saying the language and the narratives of what it is that they want to hear. But the minute you step out of place, the minute you start having an opinion, because again, when you're being that mouthpiece, you have to play into the program. You don't get to have thoughts. You don't get to start all of a sudden speaking for your collective and calling things out if it doesn't add up. No, that's done, because the minute you do that, you're one of them. So they're putting her back into the one of them category. So now she has to figure out, well, who is my next audience? Because I just can't jump somewhere. So now she's testing the waters, right? Now she's in this space where, again, now you're seeing these interviews where she's softer, you know, a little bit. She's still just as cuckoo and terrible, but some of the things are a bit softer. She's coming off a bit more nuanced. And so now she's doing this whole rebranding, redoing her image. Even the appearance has changed. You know, she done got a hairstylist, right? And so the hair is looking a little bit different. You know, there's a little bit of juices and berries in there now. So the hair's blowing with the wind, right? Different makeup, different clothing. I'm like, oh, I see exactly how you're moving with this. And so she's testing the waters with black folks first. Let me see how they're going to respond to some of these things that I'm saying, because I can always come home to my people. And I'm just like, nope, this is the nonsense I'm talking about. And that's why I always say the question becomes, when you kind of see people who have jumped into a bunch of nonsense and all of a sudden start trying to pander to black folks, my question becomes, well, let me see what it is you're rooted in. Where's your roots? What's your foundation in? And when you look at her track record for the last almost decade, it is not rooted in anything about the progression of black people collectively. It has all been about her and herself and her paycheck. And I am not falling for it. So before we go any further, I would like to just dive down the trail of the Candace Owens isms, okay? We're going to get on the train. We're just going to ride to Candaceville, because I need people to realize that while she's doing this rebrand, stop her ahead of her tracks, because I need people to realize all of the detriment that she has thrown into these conversations, because she has been in the way of progress and then gaslit us and made it seem like all of us were just crazy. We were crazy for feeling some kind of way about a lot of the things that were happening in this country, especially towards black people. We were being gaslit and told we're emotional. You know, there's something wrong with being emotional because you see people who look like you literally get murdered on camera. Right? Let's jump into it. All right, now I'm not about to sit here and go through everything that she said, because again, this has been her brand. This is the kind of stuff she was spewing out weekly on her platform. So we would be here all day if we went down the list of all the crazy things she said. But I'm just going to go through a few, because I want you guys to take note of a certain pattern that you'll notice, right? And so the first thing I'll bring out is, again, her response to a lot of people being outraged about the police brutality that has been taking place in the United States, and as far as the people who've been protesting and calling for change and action and trying to organize, she said that entire demographic, especially the black folks who were complaining about it, were a bunch of whiny toddlers. Understand, the language being used is the language that, again, appeases what you call the Ben Shapiro disciples, who think there is nothing wrong with how things operate. And because, again, challenging the status quo means that they would have to be uncomfortable. So in her role is to make sure that they stay comfortable. And by her being that token Negro that can say all the talking points that they want to hear, they can feel justified in their viewpoints by her endorsing them. So that's kind of how she moves. Then we get to the conversation of Juneteenth. Now, me personally, I've always said I wish they didn't make it a federal holiday, because I felt like that was something that was in-house for black people collectively. That was something we celebrated amongst ourselves. Now that it has been exploited and disrespected, you know, it's in the same way that the Negro National Anthem, I'm not a fan of it being sung at the NFL games. Not because I don't think the song is important, but I think that song is for us. And now that it's been put on this platform, it's open for people to keep disrespecting it and disregarding it, and it's like it's tarnished something that was for us. So I've always felt that way. But her viewpoints on Juneteenth, she said it's ghetto and it's made up, right? Now we're in a point where, again, there's not even a respect for the plight of Black Americans. There's not even a respect for our experiences. And again, the idea of calling something ghetto, you know what that means, right? That's her disassociating from what she deems as black. Because again, for a lot of people from the outside looking in, they see black people as all of us are just ghetto. And hey, there is nothing wrong with being who you are, but the issue is this. She recognizes that by kind of distancing herself and saying that's ghetto, it paints her to be in a light of, I'm not like those Negroes. I'm special. I'm different. Because her brand has also been, I'm just so intelligent. That's why nobody understands me. You know, so again, she's going to break her neck to spew out all these terrible talking points and things that just make no sense, all again to appease that same demographic at the expense of everybody else, right? That's kind of been the way that she moves, right? Then again, we saw her response to the concern that a lot of people started having with regard to the rise in white nationalism, especially after what happened in Charlottesville and the dude ran over the girl and killed the girl with the car and everything. And she thought that, okay, that response is stupid. Right? You guys are being stupid, overreactive. There's not a rise in white nationalism. And we've seen what's happened in this country in the last 8 years, right? You know, and then when it came to Breonna Taylor, and for me, this was a sore point because I remember being on this platform dragging people because folks wanted to sit here and be stupid. But for her, this is her tweet. Idiot take. Breonna Taylor, and this is, again, her speaking but mocking folks. Idiot take. Breonna Taylor must have been shot because she was black and not because her boyfriend was a career criminal drug dealer who fired at police first while she was standing behind him. It's Ray, R-A-Y-C-ism, racism. And I'm like, see, here we go. Now, we've already seen the outcome of what happened with the Breonna Taylor situation. And we ended up discovering, okay, there was a whole police cover-up. There was police misconduct. Police were charged. No, the boyfriend that was in the apartment was not a drug dealer. And no, she was not standing behind him. She was shot in her bed, right? But again, the idea of stripping away the narrative of truth and helping to paint a narrative of the idea that black people are always criminals and that when black people are unjustifiably killed by the police, you know, there's a reason behind it and it's justified. And I want us to also get out of the habit of thinking that, you know, it's normal for police to just keep going and killing folks, because when she does that, that's what she's endorsing, the idea that, oh, well, you should have complied, you should have did whatever. And so she painted the picture of Breonna Taylor brought it on herself, right? Somebody who had her own 9-to-5, had, you know, and mind you, understand, the boyfriend that was in that situation that, you know, ended up shooting at police because the police did a no-knock warrant, showed up, half of them weren't in uniform, and he's thinking somebody's breaking in, and he defended himself because any other time, she's also somebody who loves to tout and run around talking about guns save lives. Now here's somebody who's using their Second Amendment right. You want to criminalize him. Why? Because here's a black man, and he fits the description of exactly what it is that you want to speak out against, because again, there's that demographic and that collective that you want to appease because it puts a bigger paycheck in your pocket. So that was some nonsense in regard to that. And she never backtracked with the Breonna Taylor situation. Once it was discovered there was a police cover-up and people were charged, and then you found out it was even bigger, and it was even an entire gentrification deal, like all kind of stuff going on, all kind of corruption behind Daniel Cameron and crew. You haven't heard any kind of backtracking. Then Ahmaud Arbery, the same thing. This is the individual that we saw get shot and killed by them racist people, right? Who are all now who've been convicted, right? But before the convictions, what did she say? Ahmaud Arbery was caught on camera breaking into an unfinished property that was owned by Larry English. His mother has confirmed it's him in the video. Please stop with the just a jogger BS narrative. Avid joggers don't wear khaki shorts and stop to break into homes. And then the next stop, now we got to pivot and jump into somewhere else. Black America, when 9-year-old Tyshawn Lee is lured from a basketball court down an alleyway and shot dead by a black gang member. Crickets. Black America, when a repeat burglar is shot dead after breaking into someone's home. Racism, injustice, protest. Our culture is a joke. Hey, first of all, you can drop this R because you're not a part of it and you chose to disassociate anyway. But notice two things, right? With Ahmaud Arbery painting the narrative of, again, violent burglar, when in reality, when you look at the footage, it's just this dude checking out some random spot that's under construction. There's nothing to steal from a construction site. What is he going to take? One of the beams? Be for real. But painting the narrative of him being a criminal. We get to the trial, people are convicted. Turns out he wasn't doing nothing but jogging. But again, she never backtracked. She still runs it and runs with those same viewpoints because she knows that, again, it fits the narrative of how people want to see black men in that specific image. Same thing with black women when we talk Breonna Taylor. Then what does she do? Pivots. The same thing we see all the time when people call out the flaws within police brutality and flaws within racism in this United States. And then instead of addressing that, she wants to all of a sudden care about the black child that was lured by gang members and killed. When it's like, if you cared about it like you really did, it wouldn't be a response into something else. That would have been the first thing you were talking about on your platform. You have all kind of coalitions going after gang violence. And then the part that gets me the most is time after time, there are so many grassroots organizations that work to combat intra-community violence, right? Violence within the community. So many different groups. If you follow my channel, you know for like the last handful of years, right here specifically for DC, I have a link to the nonprofit group Guns Down Friday, right? There's all these groups that fight and claw to try to help and fix some of the issues in the collective and in the community. But you know what? They never pay attention to those groups. They only kind of weaponize the idea of violence within black communities when they need to justify why white people have done something terrible to somebody black. Now they want to paint the narrative like, oh, you guys, it's all in your head. This is what you need to be focused on. Oh no, people can focus on more than one thing. But the problem is you want black folks to stay silent in regard to anti-blackness because, again, too much smoke against that collective that keeps you paid all of a sudden means you have to work a little bit harder to fight that narrative because you must maintain that status quo. That's what that's all about. It's not about her caring about anything about Tyshawn Lee, because his name never came out of her mouth until she needed to find a reason to justify why Ahmaud Arbery is dead. Right? Nonsense. Right? And it gets deeper than that. And then, again, you know, she was somebody who, again, was advocating for getting rid of the idea of welfare. And I want people to understand, first of all, when she's saying welfare, understand the imaging that she's utilizing. She knows when we go as far back to the Reagan era and the idea of welfare queen and everything, that term is now associated with black people. And not just associated with black people, but put into this narrative of black people that game the system and don't work and don't try and don't do anything and they just take all of the tax dollars. When in reality, understand that welfare has so many pockets and layers it falls into. If there's somebody who is raising a child that has special needs, they get money from the state. That is technically welfare, right? You know, even for people who have full 9-to-5 salaries and live in different cities, these cities have gotten so expensive in regard to rent that you have things called like affordable dwelling units and different programs that subsidize your rent based on how much you get paid, right? And so that technically falls under a welfare bracket, right? You know, food programs, all kind of food assistance, all these different things. She's advocating to get rid of all of that. Not because all of a sudden it will make society better, but because, again, it appeases that demographic that she markets herself to. Now, yes, I would love for us to get into a space where society wouldn't have to depend on these programs, but the way that things are set up, unfortunately, there are people who are collateral to a bigger system where, yes, they fall by the wayside. They need additional assistance to help them get and stay on their feet. They're trying to maintain. They are doing the best that they can. So by villainizing and vilifying them as being lazy and people who have no ambition or aren't pulling themselves up by the bootstrap, it's really rich coming from you who's now out here asking for donations. To do what? You literally talk. Turn your camera on and say your 2 cents like everybody else, right? Pull yourself up by the bootstrap. Nonsense. Then we get to George Floyd, right? She literally helped push the narrative that he didn't die from an officer, Derek Chauvin, literally sitting on his neck and putting all of his body weight on this man's neck for 8 minutes. Oh no, he had fentanyl in his system. That's how he died. And I'm like, so you're telling me that had he never been stopped by police, he was just going to walk out of that store and drop dead? That's what you're saying. And she was so pressed about it, she ended up creating a documentary to further push this narrative, which, again, the documentary kind of fell apart anyway. And then she was so shady with how she did it, even finding George Floyd's roommates and not really telling them the purpose of her documentary, but trying to get them to say things that would help push her narrative. Again, pushing the idea of that George Floyd brought it on himself, right? Gaslighting everybody. So, nonsense. Then, reparations. Can we get to that, right? Her thoughts on reparations. Man, this girl here. Reparations are the extraction of money from people who were never slave owners to be given to people who were never slaves. It's revenge for something that was done to ancestors at the expense of people who had nothing to do with it. Again, her having a very vague approach on this conversation of reparations. We know that the conversation of reparations is about a structural issue and the generational wealth accumulated as an end result of slavery, the Jim Crow era, sharecropping. And it gets bigger than that because reparations isn't just tied to slavery. It also ties to, again, what we saw with housing discrimination and redlining and the FHA program and how black people were left out, how black people were left out of the GI program, how black people were left out of the New Deal, how black people were not even allowed to be a part of the FDA program because of the land that many of them used for their farms was heirs land. It didn't qualify for the USDA program. And so they didn't qualify for farming. And that's why we've lost 14 million of the 15 million acres that we once had as farmers. Like, there's all this stuff that's structural, but she decided to paint the picture as a one blanket statement again to make it seem like, oh, let's individualize a structural conversation. Let's take a structural conversation that is all about cause and effect and economics, and let's strip it down to individuals, and then say people are out here whining, they're just not earning their keep. But it's so funny because she likes to pick and choose when she cares about racial discrimination, because she certainly sued her high school for it and won. Right? She understood how blackness worked then, right? Now that she's gotten this platform, or had this platform, and again, there's that group she needs to appease, she wants to do the whole let me disassociate, pretend I'm not one of them. I don't do that race thing. I don't complain. I'm not a whiny toddler. Like, be for real, right? And again, and then, here we go. And a prime example again, let me find another quote here. All right? I can't think of the last Asian that I ran into that talked about internment camps, she said to the crowd, but black people always want to talk to me about slavery. Right? Again, playing that same game where, again, it's the conversation of let's individualize structural conversations. Let's just change the narrative around history. Let's restructure things, because if we can just paint it to be that, you know, the reason people are in the predicaments that they're in is just because it's all to the fault of their own. There is no kind of system in place that somewhat creates spaces where opportunities are lost. We're going to ignore all of that, right? We're going to paint things. And again, even with the conversation of those in the internment camps, they also got reparations. So hell, they ain't got nothing to say because they got a check. So, you know, this is where we're at. Then the idea of her, again, spreading the idea, white privilege is a lie, right? Same nonsense, right? And we saw what she said about the conversation of DEI, because that's the new wave right now, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, that's the new wave. That has morphed from the race card and morphed from reverse discrimination and reverse racism to woke to CRT, and now it's DEI. That's the next wave everybody's hopping on. She's hopping on it. So now she'd be terrified if she was on a plane that had women pilots. Like, this girl is full of nonsense. And so, for me, I just need people to remember that this is what she's decided to latch and lock herself into. So just because some white men done kicked her off to the curb, she doesn't get the sympathy card all of a sudden, because she endorsed and played into that same narrative, played into that same system, made lots and lots of money. I'm talking 6 and 7 figures by spewing out anti-black talking points, by being in the way. Being in the way. Do you know how many people use her as a reference to justify racism in this country? Do you know how many people use her as a reference to try to gaslight other groups of people who literally show up with stats, numbers, documentation, ordinances of the city, different articles, amendments, all this different stuff that highlights the structural issues that exist in this country in regard to anti-blackness and how racism affects people on a structural level? How many people use points that she's made to try to justify the nonsense? And because she has black skin, they say, well, if she feels this way, that's how y'all need to be. And so she knows how this game works, all right? She's chosen to be a mouthpiece for white supremacy and anti-blackness, and it made her a lot of money. Now the tides have shifted, right? And she's not really sure how this is going to work for her. And so now here comes the sympathy card. Now here's her asking for donations. Make it make sense. That girl, when I say a clown, a clown. Candace, be for real. Stay on over there with that nonsense. Like, for me, there's just too much damage. It's one thing to sell out an entire collective of people because you're trying to get a check, but it's another thing to constantly double down and build bigger platforms and end up on panel discussions and news shows and get work published, spewing out things that aren't even true. To literally make a documentary about a man who was murdered in front of the entire world by police officers who sat on this man's neck with no empathy as he pleaded for his life, and we all watched it in real time. And for you to be so pressed because you're all about comforting, again, that same demographic and making them feel good about their terrible decisions, that, you make a documentary just to kind of push a narrative. You know how many times people come on this thing and like, no, he died from fentanyl. It was overdose. Oh, effing please. Be for real. So no, Candace, you on your own on this one. You can stay over there with that. You wanted to roll in, get worms and everything, go over there and enjoy. Do not bring that nonsense over here, because that's what you built for yourself, so enjoy it. Let that be a lesson learned. You play foolish games, here come the foolish prizes. Idiot. Anyway, I'm out. Share your 2 cents. Subscribe.